So some of you want to know more about the specifics of how I study 8 languages every day. You want to know more about my process, how I go about it. So I thought I would make this video to talk about that. You can see my notes for the video. And yeah, so the 8 languages again are Spanish, German, Japanese, Mandarin, Chinese, Teochew, which is a Chinese dialect, Korean, Sanskrit, and Arabic. And there are also 2 other languages which I'm studying, which are French and Italian, but I don't include those under the 8 because I don't necessarily study them every day. But the 8 languages I listed, I do study every day, even if just for a little bit. So usually the way I go about is I study in 15-minute sessions. I used to study in 20-minute sessions, but Professor Arguez actually recommended 15-minute sessions. And so I started doing that and I found that it worked quite well. And I think 15 minutes is a good number because it's enough to make some progress. And it's also enough that you don't burn out, you don't get tired, it keeps it fresh. So my general day, what it looks like is after I wake up, the first thing I do is I meditate for 45 minutes. I actually meditate for 45 minutes in the morning and additionally another 45 minutes in the evening. But after I meditate, I have a schedule where I study Japanese for 15 minutes, Sanskrit for 15 minutes, and then Arabic for 15 minutes. And that's kind of my morning block of study time. I do that before my day begins so that no matter what happens during the day, no matter how busy I get, at least I have that block of 45 minutes locked in and I have the language study. Now, the reason why I chose these languages, Japanese, Sanskrit, and Arabic, is because Japanese, I wanted to do some research into something called Sanmeigaku, which is a form of divination. And by the way, I don't believe in fortune telling, it's purely an academic interest. But then Sanskrit and Arabic, I'm in the Sanskrit and Arabic classes at the academy. So I want to keep up with my studies so that I'm ready in time for the classes. Now, after I'm done this morning routine in that block of time, I continue to study in 15-minute blocks for all the other languages, but it's more of a free choice. There's no set schedule. I kind of just choose whatever I feel like doing in that moment. So for example, right now in Spanish, I'm reading for the class Sobre Héroes y Tumbas by Ernesto Sabato. I actually finished this book and then I read El Túnel by him, and then now I'm reading Los Llanos by, I think, Federico Falco is his name. But yeah, unfortunately I don't have those last 2 books because I'm reading them on the computer. For German, I'm reading the Unendliche Geschichte. But before that, when I was studying the grammar and trying to get it good at German before reading the literature, I was going through the Assamil. This is the English version of the German Assamil. And I went through this book. I went through the 1990s edition of Assamil for German. And I also went through the 1950s or the 1960s Assamil for German. So I went through 3 different Assamils. And after that, I actually wanted to go through the Linguaphone German. But as I was beginning Linguaphone, I was just so sick of studying the basics of German. So I decided to jump into, real literature in German. And I'm trying to think, what was the first novel I read was Märchenmond, or it's called Fairy Tale Moon in English. And that was a great book. But also, I read in Japanese. Right now, I'm reading this book. And this is Yume o Kanaeru Zo, which is the elephant that grants dreams. And it's about Ganesha, which you can see here on the cover. This is a bestseller. I bought this book maybe, I don't know, at least more than 10 years ago. And even at that time, it had sold over 1,700,000 copies, I think a couple of sequels have come out since that time and was turned into a movie apparently in 2009. So, very successful book, and I have an interest in Ganesha, so I thought it'd be a fun book to read, and I'm reading that. Besides that, other languages like Korean, I have the French version of the Asumil for Korean. I don't think they actually have the newer Asumil in English for Korean, and that's why I got the French version. But I'll go through this, I'll shadow it, so I'll go to a lesson and I'll listen to the audio that comes with this book while speaking it at the same time. And I'll try to do that to the point where I can just say it fluidly and naturally at the same speed as the audio. So the other big component of what I do is I do flashcards on Anki. And the reason why flashcards are a good idea and why I do them in addition to all this other reading and studying is because flashcards are good to be able to keep the habit of studying each language every day. Even if I'm out, like let's say I go to New York to visit my brother in Brooklyn, I can do Anki flashcards while I'm riding the subway. And that way I at least get some time put into the language. And that keeps the habit of doing that language each and every day. I find that if you don't do the language, even if it's not for a minute, if you just do 0, and you do that for a few days, it's very easy to fall off the wagon. It's very easy to just give up and stop doing it at all. And then so much time elapses before you realize, hey, I should have been doing this a little bit every day. The other good thing about doing flashcards, even if you just do it for 1 minute a day, you might say, well, what's the point of just doing it for 1 minute a day? You may as well not do it at all. But the thing about doing it for 1 minute a day is that it keeps it in your mind consistently every day, and that plants the seed for future opportunities. So, for example, let's say with Korean, let's say that I don't get the opportunity to do shadowing in the Asumil. I don't get the chance to read through it, but I do get the chance to do Anki flashcards for a couple minutes a day. Now, later on, I might run into someone who speaks Korean, and in fact, that happens. My friend Mike and I, we went to a Korean restaurant in Ardmore outside Philadelphia, and the waitress spoke Korean, so I spoke a little bit of Korean to her. And then later, when I met Professor Arguez in Brooklyn, New York, I met his wife. And his wife is Korean. She speaks Korean, so I spoke some Korean with her. And I also met a friend named Lena, who I might talk to a bit more in order to have some conversation practice. But the point is that if I had not studied Korean, consistently every day, even just for that little bit, it would not be fresh on my mind. It would not be available just on the tip of my tongue to be able to speak it out when these opportunities came up. And who knows, maybe an even bigger opportunity might come along, like a potential class at the Language Academy or something like this, and then I'll just be ready to go, and that'll be great. The last thing I do is I record all of my studies, all of the time and the activity that I do for each language in a spreadsheet. And I do this for motivation, and I do it to see where I'm spending my time. It's good to be able to see, I studied this much time recently, and before that I was studying less time. And then I can think about, why was I studying for less time? Why am I studying for more time? What can I do to increase my study time? What can I do to prevent not studying as much? And the spreadsheet is just fun to be able to look back on the numbers and see the progress I've made, because that's a lot easier to look at than to think about what level you are in the language, because that's a bit harder to get a grasp on. If you look at the numbers like, I studied for 300 hours in this language, that's much realer. It's much realer than say, I could study or I could understand this much in the language before, and maybe now I can understand this much it's hard to compare because you can't go back in time and think from that perspective that you had about looking at the language and understanding how much you were able to do. So yeah, I hope that gives you more insight into my study routine and how I study 8 languages every day. I've not missed studying these 8 languages every day for, I don't know, at least since the beginning of the summer when I made that video. However, I was studying the 8 languages every day even before that. But I know at least from this summer I've been doing it every day. I haven't missed a day yet. And I hope to continue that in the future. So yeah, I hope that helps you, and good luck in your studies.